Um, Explore, I found through one of the emails that I get from Chicago Innovate. It's like an
Gotcha.
innovation email. Sir, they put together stories um, on a daily basis, and there was one of them. And when
Oh,
I saw the surgical piece in there, I thought of you.
yeah, no, that's I mean, it certainly is a hot space right now. Um, I'd say pretty hot space. It still is going to be a climb to get to the level that those guys want to get to, because there's going to be a lot of competing forces against them. So a lot of what they're doing, and if you see in the more in the med device world of things, is like what I've been doing for 20 years, and that's supporting, selling, supporting, servicing devices in the OR. So you not only sell the surgeons on that your widget can work in their hands and potentially benefit their patients, but
Mm-hmm.
then you go into the operating room and you help coach the team about the widget or the instruments or what have you, while the surgeon's doing his job.
Yeah.
And a lot of what sort of an Explorer OR, they're in a category, not amongst themselves, but only with a handful of players in that. And some of what their platform is then to, I wouldn't say eliminate the representatives in the OR, but allow those reps to be potentially more efficient in their job.
I see.
So maybe he or she as a representative can, via the Explore OR platform, can create content and maybe videotape themselves of how different things are assembled, or have different indications for use presented in a digital way. And maybe sometimes, I've been there so many times where you're standing in an operating room for a couple hours, and really your input is only needed for a portion of that, minutes, 10, 15, 20 minutes or so of that time. But it's important that you're there and that you're available for those quick questions, or certainly from when your time is needed. So we're Explore OR, and I don't know all the details about their platform, but I know enough to be dangerous. And it's such that, so they're creating a digital content, and then would have the ability to call you and have you pipe in via Zoom or whatever FaceTime sort of scenario, to be able to say, oh, hey, we have a quick question here, look at this, it's not working right, can you help me out?
Right. So that's great.
So
Let me just ask you this, Jim, before we get too deep into that. So just if you would, just like talk about a bit about your role in your company, what the company name is, and your role there, and um, and we talk a little bit about how you work with your surgeons, and then
oh,
we'll get
gotcha.
into Explore. Yeah.
Well, so what I'm doing now is sort of different. So in the last 6 months, I'm
Okay.
working for a company called Vested Medical. And what Vested Medical is they are a unique company, and one of the first of its kind in the United States that offers off-site sterile processing. So in the environment of orthopedic and spinal reconstructive surgery, where you're getting an artificial knee or a hip or having spinal reconstruction, there's a number of toolboxes that need to be delivered for those surgery and instrument sets that the surgeon uses to implant the devices. And there is a sterile processing department in most of in all of the hospitals and surgery centers that have to process and sterilize those instruments. And oftentimes that creates a bottleneck in the supply chain of
Mhm.
the just sort of the continuum of care. So what this company's unique process is, they take that offsite and basically act as a third-party logistics provider of sterile processing. So they've got an innovative building that they've developed that's state of the art in Elmhurst, and we're soliciting hospitals and surgery centers, as well as the vendor OEM manufacturers, to adopt the process and adopt the service. right now.
Okay,
So it's
well, let me make
reducing
sure
the
I got
pressures of
this.
supply chain.
Got it. So with certain types of surgeries, you're saying with like knee surgery, back surgery, is it all types of osteo, whatever?
Yeah, I
It-
mean, you'd kind of categorize most of that into orthopedic procedures because the
Or,
orthopedic being bone
yeah,
and bony focused and joint focused. So
got it.
it's for the high volume level of procedures. People that are getting knee and hip replacements, and people that are getting reconstructive spine surgery.
And so the instruments they use are unique in that they need to be sterilized a certain way, and not all, so some of the instruments can stay on site, it sounds like, but some of them need special care, and that's where you guys come in and take them off site and sterilize them and bring them back?
Well, so the vendors themselves, and there's a number of different vendors out there, as you can assume. The vendors themselves supply the hospital with the the instruments to do the procedure. Then the hospital themselves have their own set of instruments, sort of the general instruments that they use. And then oftentimes what happens is these departments are very tight for space as just as evolution has occurred, and they get busier and busier. So where they used to keep a lot of the vendor instruments sometimes in-house, now oftentimes those instruments are brought in and out of the hospital on a daily basis, or every other day, couple day basis, just based on the schedule, because also those instruments are being used at other locations throughout a given geography. So they're oftentimes called loaner instruments because they're just sort of there's no fees exchanged for it, but the vendor is loaning the instruments to the hospital or surgery center, so the surgeon can use those to ultimately implant that vendor's devices.
Okay.
So,
Um,
so
so,
there's lots of things to get into, reasons for why, obviously this company's new service has some advantages to the providers, be it the surgery centers and the hospitals. And a lot of it just has to do with efficiency and inventory control and economy of scale, cost effectiveness.
and your company again is called what?
Vested
Vest,
Medical,
yeah, and
VESTED Medical.
got it. And the, um, the center you talked about in Elmhurst, right? That's, what's the role? What happens there?
So that is basically it's a brand new state-of-the-art facility that is designed to be, or is, a sterile processing department. It
I
would
see.
be very similar to what is in the basement of a hospital, or in the particular room of a surgery center, but it's state of the art. There's a lot of hospitals that exist in surgery centers that have antiquated equipment or older departments that may not, they were built maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, prior to this massive explosion of patients that are, have desire to get their knees and hips fixed.
Right. So that's interesting. So, what you're saying is that there is, I mean, you just said that there's this massive demand on orthopedic surgery at this point, or like when do you think this kind of started?
Well, I
That
mean,
the uptick in all the orthopedic surgeries going on.
it's, a lot of it has been driven by, population and the baby boomers,
Ah,
and also the design and advancement in the technology that exists in the devices themselves.
okay.
So, back in the day, folks like our parents would have, been shying away potentially from getting a knee or a hip replacement because maybe they heard a friend of theirs got one as well, or some of their older relatives got one, and it didn't last for whatever reason. It could be a number of different reasons why it wouldn't have lasted, but some of it, hang on one second.
Yeah.
sure this is just my car
Thanks.
insurance. My car extended warranty needs to be updated. But yeah, so as technology has advanced, there not there was a given lifespan on the implants and themselves, but the technology is just advanced. So where at one point people would have expected artificial knee to last them, 10 to 15 years, now people can confidently say that a knee or a hip's going to last them 25 to 30 years, and maybe more, maybe beyond that. So you have the baby boomers that are out there that are saying, well, I'm 65 or 70, and mom got a knee at 80, but she lived in pain for 10 years. I still want to play in the yard with my grandkids, so I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna get my knee now. And then also along those lines are guys like us in their 50s or 40s and maybe even 30s that have had sports injuries or whatever it is, and they're saying, hey, I have a quality of life that I want to live, and I'm gonna go for the surgery because the technology is there. So it's just really the proliferation of better technology, better techniques, better surgical outcomes that have been just driving this market. And I mean, the market's exponential. It's like a hockey stick over the next couple of years for folks that are going to need these types of procedures.
Wow.
The desire to get them.
You've got the demand of, just patients coming in and get the work done because there's better techniques, there's better medicine essentially to help them, and it lasts longer. So that demand causes just an influx of more of the instruments to be used, which requires, vested medical to have to, come in and say, hey, we'll take this batch of instruments and sanitize them on a schedule or something, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's cool. So tell me about, like, we've talked before about the where you actually go into surgery. And do you do that anymore, where you have to go in and tell the doctor how to use the instruments? I found that fascinating.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've done that for the past 20 years, and with vested, I personally I have sort of stepped away from that now.
Yeah.
But I sort of am now. So instead of representing, a couple different manufacturers and whatever it might be, knees, hips, spine, shoulders, I work now agnostically with all of the manufacturers in trying to help them deliver surgery better. So that's Vested's goal. And just having been around the industry for so long, I know where a lot of the pitfalls are, and the sort of the mousetrap for what Vested's created was very intriguing to me. And the reason why I sort of have joined the company now is because they've come up with a real solution to really it's sort of simple supply chain logistics for what they're doing. And then they have a technology platform. I mean, they have a specific technology platform that they refer to as, and that they coined ground control. And what ground control, and they've applied for a patent, they have patent pending on this ground control. And ground control does basically is talks to everybody and coordinates everybody, coordinates the surgery schedule, coordinates the vendors, coordinates the delivery, what does the doctor need for this specific procedure, what instruments, what tools is he specifically requesting, and then coordinates with the vendor themselves to double check that for accuracy. Because I always kind of, for folks that don't understand, you can kind of refer to it as like, you're a golf club, and the vendor is like the caddy to the golfer who's the surgeon, and he's got a set of golf clubs, and maybe for a particular procedure he only needs the pitching wedge and the sand wedge, though the vendor has everything. And oftentimes the vendor brings the entire bag, and it's a waste. It's a waste of resources, it's a waste of materials. There's pressure on the, on the ecosystem, the green, trying to be green. And
Right.
again, just economy of scale to be able to do that. So part of what this ground control does is helps bring all of the details of the procedure to the surface sooner in the continuum of care, so that the vendor can chime in and say, oh, okay, I understand exactly what needs to be delivered for this. I don't need to bring in or have everything brought in. I can pare that down to what is only absolutely necessary.
Cool. So ground control is helping manage the, so they're helping manage the supply chain with the vendor and the surgeon.
Correct.
Wow.
Vendor, surgeon, hospital, or surgery center. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And surgery centers are an interesting thing that's come up in the last few years, I think, right? I mean, um, they I never
Yeah.
I never had a lot of experience with going to the surgery center other than for my son once about 2 years ago. But that was the first time I was ever in one, and apparently they're pretty common for a lot of surgeries now.
Absolutely. And it certainly is part of why one of the business propositions of why vested exists. You're absolutely correct. So what's happening is there's a paradigm shift
Mhm.
in the elective procedures. So, people will say, and sometimes it sounds kind of crude, is sick people go to the hospital. When you need a procedure done, you have to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
When you need a knee replacement, you want that done. So it's elective. So you're choosing to do that. You could hobble around and be in pain and taking medication and probably be able to get by. But again, we were talking about that level of quality of life. And we live in an advanced society that, by and large, folks are insured even through Medicare and Medicaid, affords them the opportunity to choose and elect to get a procedure. So because of that, and actually COVID's helped push it along, and again, based on the techniques and the successes that have been developed in the surgeon's hands and in the device makers arenas, they've made it where the outpatient surgery centers in my opinion, it's potentially a better place to get a joint procedure done,
Mhm.
just by the level of they're just laser focused in on what they do, not the broad stroke like you might get at the hospital. It's not to say you don't get bad or you don't get good care at the hospital, because you certainly do, and that will certainly maintain and remain. But
Mhm.
there's so many cost pressures, because when people that qualify to get an outpatient joint procedure, they're going to go into the surgery center in the morning, they're going to have the procedure, and they're going to go home to recover in the comfort of their own home that
Yeah.
afternoon. So that's a big thing, and you can imagine if someone has to stay the night at the hospital, it's just more costs on the system
Yeah.
in general. So there's several things that have advanced that, but the projections are right now that by 2025, the volume of outpatient procedures that are done at the surgery center, specifically artificial joint procedures, is going to grow by 6 times what it
Wow.
is today. Yeah, so that's not necessarily that the total market is, the market is growing,
Mhm.
at 15, 18%, but those procedures are going to be taken to the outpatient setting in droves over the next several years.
Yeah. That's incredible. And so the surgery centers are kind of, they're pretty much a must-have at this point.
Well, yeah,
Especially
I mean,
considering the pandemic and
there's lots of economics that come into play. With that, there's surgeon economics, there's payer economics, and the hospitals themselves are investing in their own outpatient surgery centers,
yeah.
or they're co-investing with independent surgeon partners, or There's groups that exist around the nation now. There's probably 6 or 7 major groups that have sort of a cookie cutter operation. You know, they can put you in, you isolate the real estate, and they can help you build a surgery center in a matter of, months, and help you go through all of the red tape and accredited systems to be able to open up and start performing surgery.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's quite amazing. I want to ask you about something else. I'm not sure how much you know about this, but I read about this, saw this somewhere, not like last week. So these AR assisted surgeries, augmented
Yes.
reality,
Yep.
they use the goggles and to do something. You know anything about
Yep.
that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, robotics has been in surgery for many, many years now.
Okay.
And predominantly it was being done in bariatric procedures, which are more like abdominal and
Mhm.
things like that. But as technology, again, just to continue to advance, robotic surgery is now in multiple multiple service lines, specifically orthopedics. So now they've taken, a spin onto the robotics procedures, and they're going into augmented reality, which is, it's if a lot of folks are familiar with Google Glass, and you'd be able to have your clear glasses on and still see everything in front of you, but have an image overlay on one of the lenses, both of the lenses. And a lot of what this augmented reality does is it takes prior CT scans or MRI scans or even intraoperative X-ray scans, and once you take some points of orientation on the bony surfaces, with 3 points, you can basically orientate yourself anywhere in space. And then that augmented reality takes over, and it allows you to sort of, like some folks will say, like swim underneath the pool cover. So you could see what exists underneath the skin surface, and it allows you to potentially work in an environment that's a couple poke holes,
Right.
versus a complete open incision.
Do you see that as being a major shift in surgery to be able to use that sort of technology, or is it just very specialized?
It is specialized right now. It's advancing. It's advancing pretty quickly. I mean, in our market downtown at Rush, a couple surgeons have adopted it for spine surgery, knee surgery, in hip surgery. You still have to have an open incision to be able to put in the implant. So
Yeah.
I've seen it, and I've seen it mocked in those environments, and I'm sure there's folks that are out there that are developing different platforms. But within spine surgery, and again, more like abdominal type of surgeries, I've seen it. It's been out there for a couple of years right now, and it's interesting. It certainly is emerging technology. Where it's going to go, and it's the real benefit for it is what's being scrutinized right now, and
Mhm.
is up to measure. Sometimes, just like a lot of other things that exist in the world, is sometimes people develop products or services or widgets that are looking for an indication
Yeah,
versus taking an indication and then developing a product to serve and fulfill a need. So there's
yeah,
balances there, like even some of the purists will say even the robotic surgery for a knee replacement may even slow them down.
mm,
And and you can argue levels of accuracy that maybe a robot's going to give you, but these surgeons are, they're surgeons for a reason, and they're pretty amazing in their own right, where they can they're still really good carpenters, and may not need that
yeah,
additional robotic assistance, because if a surgeon that can do an artificial joint procedure in 35 minutes versus someone that takes an hour and 35 minutes, that level
yeah,
of time that a patient's underneath anesthesia, that has lasting effects on a on a patient. And
for
you know
sure,
and it makes a difference.
for sure. Let me go back to the Explorer conversation real quick, and then we'll jump into the last bit here. Um, so you started talking about Explore OR. Tell me again what they're all about.
Well, again, I mean, I know a couple of the guys over there, and I
Yeah,
know basically what their platform is. But it's a digital platform that takes these, like we were talking, takes the vendor and the hospital and kind of in collaboration digitally to be able to bring the vendor into the OR in a virtual platform where
gotcha.
the operating room could have access to the vendor's files that may be videos or surgical techniques, and they can quickly access them in the OR and be able to answer their questions quickly without having the vendor representative stand there for extended
I see.
periods of time when maybe they may or may not ever be needed. Or even
Room call for surgery.
yeah, and it allows them to be able to access and call those vendors representatives in a sort of in a FaceTime Zoom environment, so they can actually put eyes on what's going on in the room and be able to offer any assistance or guidance as it may be in relationship to their specific products.
Hmm. That's
So
pretty
again,
cool.
it's
Yeah,
an interesting platform that certainly exists out there. And again, it's agnostic to the vendors that are out there. It's not a specifically sponsored program or product that's being delivered by what a lot of people would call sort of the big four, big five vendors that are in that space right now. And predominantly they are, I mean, they have a focus in just general operating room services, of course. But where
yeah,
the vendors really come in are, some of the, where there's a high technical, high tech device that's being used,
sure.
and the reason that's it's necessary is the market is advancing so quickly, and the
Yeah,
surgeons are so busy. They oftentimes don't have time to keep up with all of the trends and new widgets and new devices. So, you know, the need for folks like what I had been doing and what a lot of good people still do is being that quarterback in the operating room to help the procedures just go smoothly as being a technical expert.
hmm, right. So what do you see as some of the big challenges facing your industry right now? I mean, I'm guessing something to do with the pandemic, maybe, or um, where do you see things that might be like where innovation is lacking, or or maybe a big challenge or big shift yet to come that people have been talking about for a long time?
Well, a lot of it right now is, and I, again, I'm biased because I feel like I'm in a pretty good space right now, and a lot of it is what and different companies will coin it with a different phrase, but it's the supply chain and it's the cost of readiness, the cost to be prepared. So where device makers, surgeon books a procedure and he's requesting a specific device for a specific patient, and the device makers are sending in everything but the kitchen sink.
Yeah,
And in order to do that, um, there's an enormous amount of dollar volumes that are invested and sustained in that on-demand inventory, where there and pricing pressures have been out there for the past 25 years as there's a race to the bottom, so to speak, for the costs of these devices, because the cost of care and the cost of reimbursement are just being those reimbursements are being pushed down and down and down.
right.
So as there only becomes a limited amount of dollars in play, the device makers are challenged constantly with being able to manage appropriately the volume of inventory that they can send in for a specific procedure without breaking the bank.
Yeah,
With you don't if you're going to move your home or whatever, you don't maybe you only need one semi. You don't need the entire United Van Lines fleet to be staged outside of your house when you realize you're only going to use one of those vans. But if you can imagine the cost of having all of that staged there, sort of eliminating redundancy, eliminating the need. So digital preoperative planning comes into play. Companies like us, and I'm excited to be involved with it, is helping manage that supply chain in general, and then the operative aspect where you find the Explore OR guys are in there, and they're helping, you know, manage it more efficiently in the operating room itself to, again, just efficiency, where, you know, there's guys out there that'll do, I mean, 300 joint procedures a year. That's a pretty busy surgeon. And then you've got guys out there that will do 1,000 joint procedures in a year. And what it takes to get from 300 procedures to 1,000 procedures is exponential. The organization, the
one
coordination.
doctor can do 1,000 a year.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
in a well-oiled environment, you can. And then there's guys that are probably have the aptitude and the ability to do that many, but their systems won't allow them to do that. Not by rule, only by capacity. So, you know, that's the goal, right? Is to do more efficiently and still be able to provide solid patient care. So that's the one caveat to it all, is you can't sacrifice any patient care whatsoever. That's paramount. Everything that I've been doing for the past 20 years has been centrically focused on patient care, patient outcomes, making sure that patient does fantastic. And surgeons are in the same environment. They're demanding that happens. So part of the challenges, if you will, is what your question was, is giving the health system better ways to be able to serve more better.
Right. And removing the friction within the process, within the supply chain, within the procedures.
Yeah, you're sort of managing a bunch of broken glass and trying not to get cut all along the way. So there's always going to be challenges, because it's always a moving target, and you are talking about healthcare. So in healthcare, there's sciences to it, but they still call it practicing medicine for a reason. Right. So they're constantly trying to achieve better results, better patient outcomes. They want mom, dad, grandma, and everybody to be able to run around the yard and play catch with the ball, chase the dog, and have a quality of life that is, it's sort of everlasting. And we have the technology, and the technology exists to be able to do that. And then there's just all of those economic pressures to try and do that within a budget, so to speak.
Right. Fascinating. Well, that was really, really, really interesting, Jim. Appreciate it. What's your website again for Vested?
Vested-medical.com. Or vestedmedical.com. That's my email address.
Vestedmedical.com.
Got it. Vestedmedical.com.
Awesome. Oh, that's all the questions I had, and I appreciate you taking the time out this afternoon.
Yeah, no, thanks. I love talking about it, because I love thinking about it, and lately I've been totally immersed in these vested conversations, because it's something. It's interesting how in Europe, what vested is doing is considered almost a standard of care. Right. We talk to hospitals here locally about, do you still do your own laundry? No, and they farm it out, because there's people that can do it through economy of scale better, frankly, just better, right. And more efficient than you can do it yourself. And it, again, just improving the medical supply chain for better surgery.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I, based on what you're saying, it doesn't seem like there's, any other way to really efficiently get it done, unless they do a wholesale change out of facilities at the hospitals and surgery centers to be able to handle that sort of thing.
And there are, I mean, I certainly, I won't say that there aren't very sophisticated departments that exist out there that have been recently remodeled or refurbished or even just built that are run very efficiently, and they wouldn't need the types of services that we're offering. So it's not, it may not be for everybody, but
Yeah.
with what we were talking about with this big push into the ambulatory surgery centers, is some of these ambulatory surgery centers were designed to do ocular surgery and wrist pinnings and
Yeah.
some very, very relatively minor procedures. But as the payer push, as we were talking about, and this shift, orthopedic surgeons are now occupying those places, sheer economics. And these smaller facilities, they just don't have the throughput. They are not designed to handle, a trunk load of instruments and tools and to be dropped off and be sterilized and then ultimately cleaned after surgery. They just don't have the capacity to do that. So that's definitely one of our key market segments.
Right. Right. Are you guys worldwide?
Right now, no. The epicenter alpha location is in Elmhurst, Illinois.
Yeah.
But we have an aggressive strategy within the next 5 years to open up 30 to 35 sites. We talk about our target are all the NFL, all the major NFL cities. We will
Right.
probably be in Atlanta in the next 6 months, Charlotte, Jacksonville, Baltimore, Syracuse, Phoenix are some of the short-term targets for us.
Nice.
Yeah, it's moving at a pretty good pace.
That sounds awesome. Well, it's good. I didn't realize that you had moved to Vested this past year, but that's
It's the medical world, man. Just it's
yeah,
like the weather. Just wait 20 minutes and it'll change.
yeah. It's the same with software. Like
Trying
every
to
day.
stay ahead of the curve.
That's exactly right, and that's really what this podcast is going to be all about. Is identifying the curve in all these industries and figuring out if you're in front or behind or underwater.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's yeah, no, that's I think that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how or how what benefit I would bring. If you think that there might be benefit to it, I
I
certainly
think you
would.
already brought it.
Anything. Yeah,
This whole conversation is perfect.
yeah,
You
yeah.
did it.
I'm yeah, happy to participate. And we can touch base, and I can keep you posted as things are developing with us, and as ground
Yeah,
control kind of takes off, and where
definitely.
we're at with that. It's a really interesting platform.
Yeah, we probably maybe set aside some time to look at that in depth on another call. And then if there's any other look at ground control, I mean, um, and if there's any other partners or colleagues that you work with that you think would like to talk about innovation in their space, I'd be happy to talk to them. So if you could think of anyone, doesn't have to be medical, it could be anything.
Yeah, certainly.
But, yeah, I'm lining up more guests now. I've got a list of about 20 and confirmed about 4. So in the next 2 weeks, I'll start publishing the episodes.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah. Cool, Jim. Well, I might start a fire later.
Hey, right on. Yeah, shoot me a text. I think I've got another. It's not really scheduled. I've got another call. I've got to jump on. It'll probably take me a half hour, and then I've got to mow my grass. So probably after that, there could be a cigar lit maybe.
There you go.
Shoot
Sounds
me
good.
a text if you start your fire.
Okay.
All right, man.
All right. Thank you. Talk
Thanks,
to you
Mike.
soon.
See you, bud.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.